Yeet yeet.
E. More like yeesh. That's what I got.
Okay, I don't think these jokes deserve to go on.
Okay, fine. I'm going for mine.
Go for it.
Wah 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 yee.
I don't get it. What?
It's a YouTube video. It's a viral video.
I'm Wilson Lai.
I'm Benjamin Yap.
I'm Eli Sands.
You're listening to Deep Cut.
On Deep Cut, we compare a director's most popular film with a personal favorite chosen by one of us.
We also discuss a director's life and career to bring in context that helps us view their movies as they may want us to.
If you're enjoying the show, please remember to give us a rating or review and subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts. This will help others discover the show. You can also keep up with us at Deep Cut Pod on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Letterboxd. And if you want to talk about this movie with us, or any other film, TV, etc., you can join us on our Discord server. And if you are a big fan of the show, we've also recently launched a Patreon. You can subscribe to it for free to keep up with the show and receive special Patreon posts. You can also subscribe to us monetarily, and you can also be one of our favorite fans of the show. So you can do that.
Yeah.
You can click a link in our description, or you can go to deepcutpod.com to find our Patreon, Discord, and all the other socials we've mentioned here. Quick spoiler warning for this movie. Okay, this feels kind of monumental. This feels maybe just as monumental as our biggest series that we've done so far, I guess, in popularity sense, our Wong Kar-wai series.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is a director and this is a film in particular that I know that all three of us have like the biggest consensus on. And
Yeah.
I know that this movie has affected all three of us in a quite a like indescribable, incredible kind of way. And I think this movie also ranks very, very highly on all of our, I guess, best movies of all time kind of canon kind of lists. Correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah.
You are not wrong.
You're wrong. No, I'm kidding.
So, Ben, what happened?
You can't be wrong. Shit's an undeniable movie.
Yeah. And that, of course, is the movie that we're talking about today, which is Edward Yang's 2000 film, E.E., a 1 and a 2. This was Yang's final film that he put out in the world before, unfortunately, passing to cancer. But what a film to go out on. I don't know if you've seen our first Patreon post or page post thing. The initial idea of making this podcast was to talk about directors' first features and their last features.
Oh, yeah.
Which unfortunately would have only let us cover directors who have passed away. So I think we scrapped that pretty early on. And I think it's sort of uncomfortable talking about like, last words from a director. But I think Yang's E.E. really stands tall as, I guess, I don't know, Yang's testament on family and on life at the time. And I think it is sort of the greatest distillation of his career in filmmaking. Before we get into talking about Yang and the film, I want to hear about how you guys first came into contact with Yang and E.E. Ben, when did this happen and how has this movie and this director affected you?
You know, I can't remember because like my Letterboxd log is like 2015, but I don't remember if I saw it before that. And I think I did. I think I saw it maybe in 2013 or like earlier because I have a feeling I watched it before going to Wesleyan. But I could be completely wrong. Maybe 2015 was the first time I saw it, but I think I remember the very first time I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. Right? That's the movie. You know, that's the only movie you'll ever need. it's EE. Like that you're done. Like if there were no other movies made after EE came out, I think we'll be fine. Right? 21st century kind of trash. Like kill them all. Just EE is enough. EE has everything. You know, that is hyperbolic, but that's kind of to me true because I don't know if I remember a movie that I've seen that is better than EE after EE came out. But a lot of bangers came out in 2000s is what I remember.
Yes, yes.
You talked about how I first came in contact with it, and I think I've seen it maybe 3 or 4 times since. And I think EE always is differently interesting when you come back to it as you age, because it's a film about multiple generations, and I feel like you can age into different sections of EE in a very interesting way. And I found that to be true every single time. It's been 6 years since I last saw it, and it's still giving me new things to think about. Seeing the current season I'm in, and then seeing the different people that I kind of connect to differently in EE. So I think it's a film that's going to keep giving.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Eli, how about you?
Yeah, pretty much agreed with Ben that I was trying to remember when I first saw Yi Yi, and I really cannot recall. It just sort of feels like it's always been there. It definitely was during undergrad, either during the extracurricular film series or during our class with Professor Lisa Dombrowski, Contemporary East Asian Cinema, when we did a unit on Young. But it kind of is just, I do maintain perhaps the best movie, period. Or just like, this is what cinema was made for,
Yeah.
is hyperbole. But I kind of do agree with Ben that even if it's not my favorite movie, because that's always changing, I do kind of think it's just the best. And I was struck on this viewing by its ambivalence, and that in any choice, in any moment, there is that happiness and sadness that the movie talks about, but also a lot of conflict and motivation. I'm seeing NJ, the father in the movie, differently this time around.
Me too. Let's talk about that later.
But I'm also seeing all of them differently this time around. It is really lovely to have a text that you can return to and view differently, especially when the text is so much about ways of seeing. So, yeah, I'm just gushing, but it's a great one. And it does feel monumental to be discussing it with you both now. How about you, Wilson?
Yeah. Don't hold the dam, because I'm still gushing over as well. Yi Yi is, I don't know. I think if there was an alternate universe that in that high school film class I was in, my teacher showed me Yi Yi instead of Chungking Express, it would like very cleanly take the place of my favorite film of all time. But
wow,
it is truly one of the greatest films of all time. And I love how, Ben, you said it's sort of like the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
Because like since I saw EE for the first time in 2016, I was also in college with you guys. I've seen this film 8 times. I've logged this film 8 times on Letterboxd. And
one every year.
Yeah. Every single time that I've seen this movie. 18个 E 不是一个 E 不是2个 E 是18个 E.
Okay.
So I said it. It's 8 E's, not 2 E's. But every time I've seen this movie, I feel like not only do I feel like I'm watching this movie with fresh eyes and I pick up on things like just with characters or with situations that I think are just so brilliant, it also like allows me to grow as a person, not to get too like philosophical, but I think like there's very few films that like allow me to just connect with my own life as far as the contents of this film are from my own life. But I feel such a deep connection with where these characters are and how they operate that whenever I revisit it, it is sort of this like life force that sustains me in some kind of crazy way. I feel like the only other like movie that might work for me is the Apu trilogy, which I haven't revisited since watching it, but I do feel a similar sort of like kinship to a movie. If you could even like describe this kind of relationship between a person and a movie like that. But yeah. So if you're listening to this podcast and you haven't watched the movie,
You need to see this movie.
if these 3 recommendations are not enough, I don't know what we have for you here. Like, I don't think you should listen to this.
Stop saying that. He says this all the time. He's like, don't listen to us if you don't watch EE. Come on. Anyway,
But we're gonna go really deep into it.
yeah, if you can watch this on a big screen and you have a chance, you gotta do it. You gotta take this. Even if it's like the second time you watched it, maybe the first time you watched it on a TV. If you have a chance to watch this on a big screen, I'm taking that chance every single time.
Yes.
Because yeah, it doesn't matter. Like, you gotta watch EE. So I've been having this thought, like, I think my parents should watch this. And I'm like, I don't know if they can handle this. This might be a lot. Like, this is a lot.
You can lock them in a theater.
No, but as a lot as a, like, if I think it's kind of emotionally damaging. Like, too bruising. I don't know if they can handle that. But that's EE. Like, it's
Interesting.
yeah, I was watching it at 8 a.m. this morning and sobbing, and I was confused.
Yeah, I was lucky. The last time I saw this movie was in the theater in April when the retrospective was coming through Hong Kong. So I feel very lucky that I got to see it on the big screen.
Yeah.
It was like quite a monumental experience. But quick Edward Yang background. Edward Yang, or Yang Dechang in Mandarin, was born in Shanghai in 1947. Same exact city that other director Wong Kar-wai was born in. Pretty crazy. And he moved to and grew up in Taipei. He studied electrical engineering in the National Chiao Tung University for his bachelor's, and then went to the US. And he went to the University of Florida for his master's degree in 1974, which was also in electrical engineering. He was always interested in film, but was professionally trained for the high-tech industry. So after his master's, he went to the USC Film School for a brief time, but that sort of scared him off, or I don't know, soured him on filmmaking because of the film school's methodologies, which he said they were too mainstream oriented, which I think is hilarious, but very telling. He also was later accepted into Harvard's architecture school, but chose not to go. And he decided to move to Seattle to work on microcomputers and dense software. I think this brief pre-film career overview is kind of painting a picture of someone who is extremely smart, but maybe a little bit well off, but also someone that is very, very smart. So in Seattle, where Yang was living at the time, Yang came across the works of Werner Herzog, specifically his 1972 film Aguirre, The Wrath of God. And he said that was very monumental in his relationship with film, and it sort of put him back on the filmmaking track. So he continued to deep dive into watching cinema while he was in Seattle. He said another big influence on him was Michelangelo Antonioni, which you can also see the links with his work. Yang returns back to Taiwan in 1980 and was asked by a former USC Film School friend to work on a film of his. And he helped write that and work on it. And that got him into the film industry in Taiwan. From that, renowned director and actress Sylvia Chang asked him to write and direct an episode of a television series that she was producing, which was called Duckweed. So he wrote and directed I think it's like over a 2-hour long TV special for this TV series. Whoa. And it's out there, it's online. I haven't seen it, but that was his first official directing work. And then from that, he got roped into an In Our Time, which is a anthology film of up-and-coming Taiwanese directors, which was sort of this foundational film in what a lot of people view as the Taiwanese New Wave movement. So he has certain counterparts. I think the one that most people put him in most comparison to is Hou Xiaoxian. So another deep cut director, Koreeda, made a documentary about these two directors, Hou Xiaoxian and Edward Yang, and followed them while they were working on new stuff and sort of talked about the difference in their directing. It is a fantastic documentary, and you should definitely check it out. And I will talk more about it when we get into Yang's other films in the subsequent episodes. But his filmography are as follows. After In Our Time, which he made in 1982, He directed That Day on the Beach in 1983, followed by Taipei Story, followed by Terrorizers, followed by A Brighter Summer Day, A Confusion, Mahjong, and EE in 2000, which was his final film that he gave to the world, this gift that he wanted to give to the world. As opposed to Ho Xiaoshen, which makes a lot of films that is countryside based, Yang's films tend to be set mainly in the city and analyzes the environment and relationships of urban Taiwan in nearly all of his films.
And all of his films are contemporary, right? Ho does a lot
Except for A Brighter Summer Day.
Oh, Brighter Summer Day is a period piece, but a lot of Ho's films are period pieces. Yeah.
Yes.
That's true.
Yes. So I would say that Yang, to me, has the appeal of, like me, similarly growing up in a very metropolitan East Asian city that was booming a lot. I know, Ben, you could probably relate to this. There was a lot of similarities in, like, I don't know, just cultural similarities that I found with Yang's work that really resonated.
Definitely.
Can you guys say more? Like, what do you recognize?
See, I did the math today. Yang in EE is my age when I was in the year 2000.
Whoa.
Or like ish. And I was like, wait a minute. And I was like, hold up, this film is about me, apparently. Not that I ever ran around with a camera when I was 8 years old, but I was like, okay, this timeline matches. It makes sense as to why, in terms of like just like the feeling of the film of 2000, completely matches with maybe my nostalgia or memory. And as I think about Yang's parents, and I'm like, okay, that also means my parents are the same age difference between Yang and NJ and Min Min, right? So it's like, okay, so that's been an interesting realization.
Yeah, and also similar to that, my parents also worked in the tech industry.
Same.
In that era. So
yeah,
like, I guess being at the forefront of this and being in a location where tech was like booming, sort of in a way that it was like out of control, and that like economic upturns and downturns were so influential, and it was just like a really massive moment for East Asia at that time historically.
What's interesting
because-
is he makes this film before .com crash happens.
Yes.
Like the year before, and then the crash happens, but then the ennui of the crash is already in the film. So I don't know how he saw the future.
It's there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think Taipei also had a 97 crash.
Oh, the financial crisis.
I think there was
There's
an
that
East
too.
Asian
Yes,
crash in
yes.
the financial crisis. Yeah. So
Asian financial crisis. That's true too. A lot was going on.
yeah. So he talks about that influencing quite a bit of it. Yeah.
That's true. Yep.
So Yang basically sets out to make a film about a whole life. He says this a lot in interviews. He says this in the director's commentary that I watched for this episode. He thought that by doing a narrative about different members of the big family, it will allow him to cover all these different stages of life. So EE is described as a humble epic. It tells the story of the Jian family through 3, maybe 4, but mainly 3 different perspectives. The father, NJ, played by Wu Nianzhen, the son, Yang, and the daughter, Ting, as they go through a few different weeks in their lives. So, where
do you want to
should
begin?
Where do I want to begin?
I have a question. Maybe just to start. All right.
Yeah.
What's the scene that gets you in this film? Number 1 scene.
Ooh, good question.
Oh my God.
What is the number 1 scene that gets you?
I think a big go-to scene for me, and something that always works for me, is that double date
Yes.
across countries,
Across
thing that is
generations.
happening across generations, where NJ meets with his childhood sweetheart Sherry when he's on a business trip in Japan, and them reminiscing about their first romantic encounters in the past is mirrored with Ting going on a date with Fatty, the guy who is once keen on her neighbor but is now trying to court her. And there's something that's just so simple and beautiful about like overlaying audio over something that's not directly related but thematically related and it having a massive impact emotionally on me. I want to know what you guys think about that scene.
Yeah, I was watching that today and I was gasping. I was like, wow, the way that it edits, the way it's written, the way that the two scenes speak to each other is incredible. Like the way that NJ and Sherry reminisce about past love. And then as you watch his daughter have her first encounter with first love and how, despite their age difference, it's all the same, right? Despite the period, it's all the same. And the way that it just kind of is. And there's like almost like a Linklater Romero like relaxed nature to both of the dates, which I really liked as well. And it's like really chill. And I don't know, it's like really relaxed, but like with NG and Cherry, like that date's also really charged with regret and nostalgia in a way that is that you're like, okay, that's also gonna be Ting Ting's future when she goes back to think about this, and she has way more trauma coming in her way when she thinks about this date later on and this guy. And I think that like it's like seeing the past but also the future, which is like quite fascinating.
I recently took a week-long course at Bard College, the Institute of Writing and Thinking, shout out, where I learned a concept that I have been thinking about ever since, like a lot, which is the idea of spaces between sentences.
Okay.
And that one sentence leading to another can be a very short logical step. I said hello to Wilson, and Wilson said hello to me. Or there can be a big leap between sentences. I said hi to Wilson.
He's leaping.
I need to think of a leap.
He's mid-leap right now. It's a big leap.
He's leaping.
The bird flew off into the sky. There's not an obvious link between those two things, but the space between them asks the mind to fill in something and puzzle a bit. I'm thinking about that concept in relation to Yi because of the way that the web of life open range of narration means that we have more access to these characters than they do to each other. So even in that double date across spaces sequence, we see how close the family members' experience are. They do not see it. There's a lot of denial of connection between them until the end. We see the beauty and the emotion of those parallels, I think, in a very clear way in this moment. But what really gets me is when Yang finally permits the connections at the end of the movie. In particular, when NJ and Min Min reconnect and NJ says, you know what, I wouldn't have done anything differently. That really gets me. And especially the final moments of the movie when Yang reads his poem and the whole core family is united there. It's devastating.
I think the argument is that you have so many characters, and by juxtaposing what's happening with the entire family across 3 generations, does what Yang says he wants to do, which is show you what you would never ever be able to see.
Yes!
And he does that with this film in a profound and simple way. To answer the question I posed, like, what is the scene that gets me every single frigging time is what happens at essentially the end of the first act, which is before the mother leaves. She has this monologue, this tearful monologue when NJ comes in.
Yeah.
And I just cannot deal with that monologue at any stage of my life because she's just wondering that her life has nothing and that she's doing the same thing over and over again. And she's having this realization after having to speak to her mother who's comatose every day and realizing that her life is the same every day and that she has not made anything of it, which leads her to go into the mountains and like become a monk or try to become a monk or like do some kind of spiritual retreat. And that monologue is not very in detailed or anything. It's very simple, but just that exasperation and that realization that life is just the same shit every day for a lot of people. Yeah, and I like wonder how other people who go through that at her age watching this movie feel when they see that, because I'm not that old.
Yeah.
And I felt that I've been feeling that way since I was like in my early 20s. I've already understood exactly what she's thinking about. So in that sense, like I've always, I think, maybe even because of this film, have been fighting that possibility that I will have that realization and trying to avoid it as hard as I can.
But there's the ambivalence that Yang creates so well, is that repetition the one and one and one and one and one is depressing and also a source of comfort. It is truly both. And it's what both limits their ability to give and receive love and enables it. It's so complicated.
I don't know if I'm that enlightened, Eli.
Me too.
Because I'm like, I can't. I need to make my life interesting. Like, I cannot be doing papers for City Hall. I'll die.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's why it gets me. And I don't think I'll ever outgrow that feeling, which is interesting. And I think that's the thing. Like, you come into EE with your feelings, and then it's going to reflect them back at you. You're going to find yourself somewhere in this. Maybe you find yourself in Fatty and like your rage at the world. I don't know. But you're going to find yourself in one of these characters. Yeah.
Yes. Well, fun fact about Elaine Jin, who plays Min Min. Elaine Jin is a Hong Kong actress, and Yang started working with her 10 years before Yi in A Brighter Summer Day, and she plays the mother in A Brighter Summer's Day, and they enjoyed working with each other so much that he decided to cast her in every film since then.
Oh.
So she has had parts in every film since A Brighter Summer's Day until Yi. And he, in this commentary, I was like, watching the commentary is, I don't know if you guys do it a lot, but it is a
No.
very different experience. Like, I don't feel like I'm as like emotionally connected to
Sure.
the movie itself because they're talking over what's happening in the movie. But it was such a, like, I don't think I've watched or read enough content of Yang like speaking about making movies, but I just was so impressed, and I was so like actually very emotional hearing him talk about working with these actors specifically. And he had so much respect and love for their collaboration, especially with Elaine Jin and also Wu Nianzhen, who plays NJ Wu. He expresses a lot of love for them and a lot of gratitude for them to take on the big task. And that monologue is just one take, and they did it. She finished it on the first take. And there was a few of those big scenes with those actors that they would just come in and they would just deliver it. And they would prep, they would understand the character and their intentions, and they would just deliver it, and Yang would be happy with it, and they would just move on. So that was one of the scenes where they were able to do that.
Let's talk about performance. I don't know. You guys want to talk about performance?
Let's do it.
Yeah. So raw.
I think we were talking about that just now, Eli, that we have like maybe a different feeling about NJ this go around,
Totally.
you know? And I think
I want to hear about that.
I really like NJ the actor's performance, like his kind of laissez-faire observer thing. Like he's just kind of like watching things happen, and I think that bleeds into what this character is doing for me now, which is that NJ is a man of inaction. He doesn't get what's going on. This is my takeaway this time, is that he's not doing anything, and he's letting things crumble in front of him, and he is choosing not to do stuff. And that's the reason Sherry is so pissed off at him, because he doesn't show up eons ago. And so that scene I'm talking about, where his wife is crying and saying that her life sucks because it's the same, and then his response is, I'll get the nurse to read her the newspaper so there's always new content for grandma, makes absolutely no sense. Like, you are missing the thing. And I see NJ as a guy that keeps missing the point because he's thinking about something else. And obviously his journey is more tied to what's happening with him and the Japanese man, Ota. But that's why I see, like, within his family, he's just not seeing what's happening with his son, with his daughter, with his wife. And that's my current like take on him.
Did it anger you on this watch? Were you like, how did you feel?
Yeah, I was really like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? Yeah, like you need to focus on the family right now. Do something, you know, don't like do your thing. But he's obviously like checked out. This dude's checked out, you know? But yeah, Eli, what's you have a funny face on.
Ben, it's so interesting because I have the exact opposite take.
Oh shit, let's hear it. I love it.
Yeah.
Come on.
On prior viewings, I was viewing NJ similarly, where he is very passive and he's kind of especially in his choice at the end of the movie to not get together with the woman who he seems to love, Sherry, that he is keeping himself beholden to certain expectations or shoulds instead of wants, and that he's repressing himself.
Mm-hmm.
But even before, on this viewing, I remembered that he says to Min Min, I would have chosen this life anyway. I started to ask myself, what if he's doing this on purpose? Like, what if he's choosing this life and it is an active choice?
Inaction is an action, yes. I get that.
Or is it inaction? I think there are things that he struggles to confront,
Mm-hmm.
like the unhappiness of people around him. But I think a telling line is during that double date sequence when NJ says to Sherry, my daughter is growing up. I'm jealous that she'll be away and doing her own thing and out of the family one day. And Yang Yang, my son, I want to be his best friend because I didn't have that kind of relationship with my dad. And that little moment does kind of, for me, cast the rest of his actions as active choices. My question is, what if this is the life that he wants, truly, and he's not tuning out or passive? It's a really interesting question to me, and I don't even know if I 100% can back it up, but it just makes me think. And it's how I felt about NJ this time.
I think I still feel ticked off by him, but I think what you're making me think about is that he is also not the typical patriarch dad character you see in stories like this.
You're right.
Usually they like to do the Chinese man that like shouts at his entire family. NJ is literally the polar opposite of that. He doesn't really do much with his family, but then he shouts at his coworkers, he shouts at his ex-lover, right? Which is kind of an inversion, I think. But he's kind of like this, he's kind of a softer in the family. He kind of doesn't exert a patriarchal force onto his family, you know?
Yeah.
He just lets it happen.
Just so interesting.
Which is really, yeah, it's just kind of interesting and maybe unusual for this kind of film.
I would say that I, like, out of you two, I feel like I am more on, like, Eli's wavelength of thinking, where I used to really question NJ when I was watching this movie and sort of maybe posed it as like a midlife crisis kind of situation. That, like, both Min Min and him are going through things, right? But I think, like, thinking about how he deals with his family, that he eventually, I think he makes a choice to return to, or was always going to return to, but also especially the choices that he makes when talking to Ota, and his sort of belief in the creator or in the creative over the money making.
Yeah.
And the way that he feels so isolated compared to his other coworkers who are so, I guess, just money thinking, and how he sort of internalizes that, and then, like, also internalizes a lot of the family stuff that's going on. I think you can see in Moon Yen-jin's performance that there's so much going on. I don't think that, like, the things with his family is going over his head. I think he is processing a lot of the things, and I think that
Doesn't know what to do.
well, no, I think that the inaction is a sort of action in a kind of way.
Yeah.
I'm sure if things went awry with the family, he would step in. But I think it's just the way that he approaches things. And I think it's really great that we see that sort of kind of father figure in this. I feel like the father figure in A Brighter Summer Day is also very unique in that kind of way as well. I think his approach to parenting, both fathers' approach to parenting in these young films, are very, very unique.
He kind of moves with the will of the world around him, which I'd say that the father in A Brighter Summer Day puts up some more resistance at certain points, but there is a similarity of being able to see what his children want and giving them the space for that.
Yeah.
Is very touching.
It is. And very relatable as well to parents and also children who, like, I don't know, we have parents that aren't always like very black and white, or we can't really read them that easily. So I think
Because they're full people.
it's very great that we have that sort of. They are, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to go through this film by characters? Like, is that the best way going
Let's.
forward? Because now we've just started on NJ.
Maybe.
I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, and then we can do tangents on like the cinematography or whatever within that character's journey, I guess.
Perfect.
And I think the big part of NJ's thing that we haven't talked about is his relationship with Oda-san from Japan. And one of my favorite things about the movie, and one of my favorite things about a lot of movies, is films where people don't speak the same language. Yeah, and I love that. And it's Taiwanese man speaks to Japanese guy with the lingua franca of English. For both sides, it's not their natural, it is not their mother tongue. So it's this kind of non-fluent or not super fluent way of communication, but they're still connecting in this profound way about philosophy and like about how they think about life. And I just love that premise. Just that's just incredible.
Yeah, it's really great.
They are truly bros.
Yeah, they're bros.
Yes. They're supportive of each other, bros, tech bros, but alternative tech bros.
I always think about how it takes up a lot of time, but it really doesn't. Like they build that relationship really quickly with not that many scenes. You maybe like see 3 interactions with them max, if not even less.
Mhm.
And you see the bond that they have and the way that Oda-san makes NJ question what his company is doing in its pursuit of profit, right?
And reflect on his own life. That whole beat that Ota says about why are we afraid to face each day? I don't even remember exactly what he says there, but it's very simple.
Like, why are we afraid of new things? We do everything for the first time all the time. Something like that, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Each day is new.
It's so beautiful.
Which is a subtle refutation of what Min says about the repetition of daily life.
It's true.
But both are true.
Mm-hmm.
So Yang has a lot of respect for Wu Nianjian, obviously, and Ogata Issei, who he cast as Ota, is this comedian. He doesn't really act usually. He has like a, so you know how in Japan, like Kitano is a part of like a comedy group, which is like 2 people. There's like a classic like 2-person like straight man, funny man sort of comedy duo in Japan. But what Ogata-san does is he does solo comedy. So it's not really stand up either. He plays all these different kinds of characters as well as doing stand up in a one-man show type situation. So Yang's Japanese producer, he worked with a Japanese production company on this film, suggested this actor, and Yang found it, or like talked about how cool it was that his producer found a non-mainstream actor for him to work with, and also a non-actor for him to work with. Yeah, but he really brushed off the question. Like, I know
You could do magic on screen.
yeah. Tony Raines was going off about this like speaking in English thing, and Yang was like, it's fine. He like my generation, we learned English at school, and Ogata went to like performed a lot of shows abroad, so their English was fine. It was not a problem. And I don't think he really got at what Raines was trying to ask him about, like English being the common denominator.
Yeah.
But instead, Yang zeroed in on music as the common denominator between both characters. So he says, like, before this, you basically only see NJ listening to music on his headphones. And that is a very, like, solo experience. And that might be, he says, practically because probably of NJ's very unique or diverse music taste. But when they listen to music together in the car, well, there's a lot of music that happens in those subsequent sequences when they meet in Taipei. But the tape in the car and the karaoke sequence afterwards, he says that music is sort of the best way that you can do to understand a person, like a core of a person. And you don't need much dialogue to do that. You just need to experience music with them. That was so beautiful that, like, yes, the lingua franca on paper is English, but the way that they were also able to bond through music makes it an even more elevated kind of connection in Yang's mind.
That's lovely.
And he wasn't playing the piano. It was Yang's wife who did the music for the film that played the piano. in all the sequences.
Oh, Young's wife did the score.
Yeah. I really like the piano stuff in the first scene in during the wedding. Yeah, that stuff is really good. And it really sets the tone for the
Yeah.
rest of the film in a very nice way. And
So gentle.
I think NJ is like the center of this because so many characters are connected to him, having their own adventures, but he's connected to all of them. Like all the extended family
Yes.
stuff like is around NJ. You have this entire subplot with Ati and his wife and his old ex-lover that's happening, and NJ is just observing this chaos happening in his life. And
Yeah.
Oh my
I
god.
love that shit. It's so dramatic. It's so Chinese. Freaking Asian people
It
just making
is.
their lives complicated. Yeah, but the wedding, it's like I've seen the drinking thing happen. You know what I mean? And the way that people fly out the handle, this kind of drama that happens. It's only like one person in the family has some shit going down, and everyone knows about it. You know, and sometimes you're there when it goes down.
I think the funniest moment in the movie maybe is when so there's maybe like 2/3 of the way through the movie, there's this sequence when Adi and his wife and mother of his child now, Jian, are having a baby shower.
Yo,
And Adi's ex-girlfriend, who he cheated on with Xiaoyan, Yun Yun, shows up and says, "We patched things up." And then Adi takes his friend Migua aside and says, "What are you doing? We have not patched things up. Like,
Oh,
why'd you bring her?"
Migo.
I love Migo. He's like, there's always that one guy that just loves to be like friends with everybody. He's the guy. He's the rah-rah guy.
Yeah.
But
There's
secretly
always
lives
that
for the
guy.
drama.
Migo.
So this huge fight breaks out. It's playing in this like static wide, like it's awful. Like people, like friendships are tearing apart in front of her eyes. It's miserable. It's also a little salacious. And then it just cuts to NJ
NJ?
standing at the doorway. He's arrived and holding his gift.
With
He's
a
just
gift?
watching.
Yeah.
There's the community meme.
Yeah.
so good.
This
Yeah,
is
it
Troy
is.
coming
Yeah,
in with
with
the pizza.
with the
Yes.
fire, with the pizza. Yeah, the fire. Yeah. Dan Harmon, blink twice if you've seen Yi Yi.
Adi's father-in-law's like, I'll cut your dick off. And then walks away.
Yeah.
Also, just to brag, I have like 1 degree of separation from this entire scene because Leon dies in the scene and I worked with the man. Great guy. He was in Tomorrow's Long Time.
Oh my
local film.
god.
So crazy. I was like,
Shout
it's Leon
out.
died, guys. I know this man.
That's so great.
Yeah.
Okay, I think it's time we can move on, and I want to talk about Ting Ting because I feel like Ting Ting
Yeah.
is, in Yang's own words, the character that undergoes the most transformation in this film. And it makes sense. She's going through her adolescence, and a lot of things are going on around her after she befriends her newly moved in neighbors, Lily and her mom, and that sort of stirs some trouble and drama. And romance into her life. I guess drama is the simplest way to put it.
There's a lot of drama happening. The mom,
There's
the
a lot
friend,
of drama. Yeah.
both of them.
Yep.
Boy.
Both of them. Both of them. Yeah.
Yeah,
Lily and
let's
her
talk
mom
about
is not good news. Yeah.
Well, I think it's important to also establish that Ting Ting's starting point, the thing that pushes her out of adolescence, that she, in the rush to get back to the wedding after dropping her grandmother off at home, she leaves trash out on the balcony. And then once her grandmother has her stroke and falls into a coma, taking out the trash, Ting Ting is the only one who realizes this and
She feels
has a cloud of guilt over the whole movie because she
Yeah.
believes that it's her fault for not taking out the trash, that her grandmother is now in a coma.
Mhm.
Of course, erroneously.
It weighs on her.
but-
Yeah.
like crazy
Yeah.
the whole movie. And she has the strongest connection with her grandmother, right? Even more so than her mother's with her mom, right?
It's very telling and sad that this young woman's coming of age is clouded and, I think in a lot of ways, shaped by that familial guilt. Even though NJ does not wield this patriarchal power, that guilt is just hardwired into
Mhm.
her. Like it's almost automatic.
I want to shout out, I think Kelly Lee, this is her only performance. She was plucked
Yeah,
off the
Kelly
street
Lee.
somewhere.
Really?
Incredible performance.
For this film, Yang held like acting workshop for children. So that's how he found Kelly. And Kelly, Ting Ting was actually written for a 15-year-old. And she is supposed to be a teen, but Kelly was 12 when she was casted. So he said that he took a chance and it really paid off.
Wow.
Yeah, he loves working with young kids because it gives Yang a lot of confidence to work with inexperienced actors because he can tell them exactly what to do and exactly what to say, and they won't get like egotistical about it.
Yeah.
So that's why
But he also supports them so wonderfully.
he really does. And he says the most important part about acting is trust, and total trust with the children was such a great start to the working relationship. And she was also his wife's piano student, so that's why he also chose her and she could play the piano for her grandma.
Yeah, so I think Kelly's performance is so good because in every scene she's like so quiet, right? And she does not match the energy of the people around her, and she feels like a real person because she kind of just is a person. And so she's so believable in all these scenes where she is so not in control of what's going on. And she's always afraid of what's going on. And I think I really like that. Like, I'm always surprised by how soft she is. And I'm always like, whoa, speak up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I think something about that felt very real. And yes, she goes through like so much crap in this. It's unreal.
Yeah.
Where do we start?
You really have to feel for her. Like, I think, of course, like, the guilt is really something that we all can understand. That sort of, like, really sinking feeling. Like, is it my fault that basically my whole family is in chaos now? And she carries that with her whilst also, starting to get tangled in other tanglements.
Yeah. So let's talk about which one? I think we just talk about this romantic entanglement where she and Lily are friends, and then Fatty, who is Lily's boyfriend, they break up, and then Fatty goes for her, and then we have this double date. And one of the best shots in the movie, which is the freaking traffic light shot.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Where they have their kiss before they go to the hotel room. Incredible shot. It's so simple.
And the lights match perfectly.
Yeah, so just to describe, they're under the overpass and talking, wide shot, super wide shot, red light, turns green as Fatty makes a move, turns back to red before he goes and kisses her. And that just simple thing of like the world is still moving around them. And the thing I think about with this film is that, just to go on a tangent, like these wide shots, and there are a lot of wide shots in this, there's a lot of the city in the film, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's through a wide shot or through a reflection, which I see him using all the time. And you see with basically every character reflections of windows of the world outside the apartment. And basically the film is reflecting an entire city. Like these stories that these characters are having reflect the entire city's ennui or its
structure.
Yeah, and it's what they're kind of thinking about. Yeah, so
constricting structure.
I really like that feeling that, it's one family, it's a life, but it's actually kind of a film that captures a city or a way of life within this country, which is absolutely just impossible to do. But somehow Yang gets there, or he gets extremely close to being able to just say everything in one movie. Yeah.
That presence of the city and macro and social history as it influences quotidian life for individual people kind of gets me thinking about the inverse of what I said for NJ in relation to Ting Ting. Whereas with NJ, I'm wondering, what if he does actually want this and is choosing this? For Ting Ting, I'm thinking about what if this is not really what she wants, and she is more driven by what she feels she should do and her guilt than active choice. I think about how Fatty pursues her and not really vice versa. And her body language doesn't really convey being super interested at any point. And I'm thinking about even that shot of the traffic lights and the kiss, which is stunning. Those lights do turn back from green to red, and Yang shows that. It's ambivalence again. And I think part of what I like about her coming of age is that she does have this moment of forgiveness from her grandmother, which is maybe fantasized, maybe not. And she gets to have harrowing experiences that she can ultimately, I hope, move past in order to get away from that structure of the city, metaphorically, that's on top of her.
That dream sequence that I think of as a dream sequence where she speaks to her grandmother is also one of the scenes that really get me.
Same.
Yeah, it wrecks me,
Yeah.
man. And she has like a great quote where she asks, why is the world so different than what we thought it would be or was? And I'm like, yeah, man, life just hits you in the face sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's basically like the grandma gave her exactly what she needed at that moment. But basically just comfort.
And it's beautiful that that's passing from the eldest female member of the family to the youngest. Like, we talk about the guilt being something we can understand, and I think that's partially true, but there's an aspect of this being a young woman's experience that I acknowledge is beyond my experience, and I think Young allows to be beyond his experience too, in a very graceful way.
This is making me think of two different things. So I'm going to start with the one that you just highlighted, Eli, about how this is Ting Ting as a young woman, her experience. I wrote this thing down, and tell me if it sounds crazy, but like,
Ooh.
I think in this film, what Young is showing, or this may be his perspective, is like women are reacting to things and having to deal with shit, but men make actions and they make mistakes. Because if you think about maybe, I think the mother makes a big action leaving, but then with Ting Ting, a lot of stuff is happening to her. A lot of stuff is also happening to NJ, but he's also making decisions. He has to do stuff. He has to go to work and stuff, right? And he's also making mistakes. And you think about Sherry as well. She's having to react to what NJ is doing, right? She is not necessarily taking a lot of the initiative, maybe, even though she wants NJ to take the initiative, and she's forced to through her emotional outbursts. So I don't know if this makes sense, but I feel this kind of difference where like a lot of stuff is happening to the women, and then the men are either doing nothing or doing something. Yeah, and maybe not having the emotional reaction. Yeah, or at least NJ. And then Adi is even Adi when he has his death scare, it seems like it was an accident. And then his wife has to deal with it, or Yun has to deal with it. Like, he makes mistakes. He leans on luck so much, and then the women are dealing with the fallout of what the men are doing. So I don't know, just something I'm thinking out loud. Yeah.
It's not as clear to me as
It's
as
not
it is to
clear.
you, but
Yeah.
I think that holds for Adi and the women in his orbit.
Yeah.
But I think for Sherry and Min Min, and increasingly Ting Ting by the end of the movie, and also Yang Yang's crush, I do see them making choices with agency and not just in reaction to the men's actions.
My second question is about how we kind of see NJ and Ting Ting dealing with a lot of stuff that's kind of happening to them that they are reacting to. And they're two of the three lead characters and somewhat passive characters, which is a very difficult thing to hinge a film onto. And yet, it is not a film that loses me. Because usually they say, the main character needs to like enact and show agency. Yang Yang definitely doing that. These two, less so. And I'm very curious as to why they doesn't feel like annoying that, okay, me for NJ, I am annoyed, but I'm engaged still watching him observe what's happening around him. Same with Ting Ting as well, like this reaction to what's going on.
So your question is like, why does it work?
What was the question?
Why does this work?
Maybe it is that moment-to-moment grace that Yang builds into it, which, again, thematically echoes the struggle between overall boredom and lack of control and day-to-day joy and incidental beauty. I don't know. Maybe that's a little too fuddy-duddy, but
I don't know. I think right now my immediate reaction is like, it's because as these things happen, we are watching them process, and I feel like they are learning. So their activity is the learning. The learning is the active part of it.
I like that
and
a lot.
I feel like I'm learning with them, and that's why
Yes.
EE is a gift that keeps giving, because I'm learning with NJ, with Ting Ting, going through this thing with them, and like processing it with them.
Yeah.
And I can feel them changing, and they might not do much to change their life, but I can feel them changing in their like.
No, but they
maybe
all
it's just
grow.
the acting. I
They
don't
all
know.
grow, and also
Yeah, they grow. I can feel them growing.
we grow with them.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like we also take these life lessons And I think, like, isn't, like, with episodic film, like, episodic type storytelling, you don't really need a proactive protagonist in order to make it work. I think they're, like, with Yang, like, there's sometimes characters make decisions, but most of the time, like, characters just live, like, just go through their lives, and they aren't as, like, goal oriented if you think about his other films. But I think
Hmm.
the way that he structures his films, and most of them are like web of life films,
Mm-hmm.
and the intercutting and the sort of, while two, like, or different storylines are happening, they sort of converge at different
Mhm.
points and sort of swell at different points
Yeah.
together. Like, they sort of move in a similar way. That's obviously not like real life, but there's this poeticness to it that rings so strong from the films that I feel like that's what really works for me. That's what carries me through,
Yeah.
is just being carried by this wave of these, like, subsequent, like, scenes, like,
I mean,
carrying me.
you can read a lot of what happens in EE as melodrama, but very understated in a way that feels like my life is a melodrama. Like my life can be a melodrama if I read it that way, right? And this is a life that's a melodrama right now, but it looks and feels very real, you know? And I think that's the thing that carries. And I think a lot about how it's a 3-hour film. It's edited like incredibly well. You know, this is a
Yeah.
film with
Oh my God.
extreme editing economy. Scenes are fast, and it's a 3-hour film, but I don't think it's slow cinema at all because scenes are short.
Agreed.
Like you go from scene to scene.
Yeah.
Scenes start in the middle, they end before the scene would end in real life. Like it just cuts from like one thing to the other. There are always these great match cuts of sound. I think about the thunderstorm match cut from the video presentation to the storm outside between
Oh,
Yang
yeah,
Yang and
Ting
Ting
in the
Ting.
Rain.
There's a few others, like the double date is also a great example. There's a few other examples I'm blanking on right now.
Yeah.
Where the film just moves between its web.
Rains coins this term when talking about those kind of scenes, and he calls them submerged continuities. And I think that's such a beautiful way of describing it, because there's a continuity happening in the grammar of the film, but not with these, like, characters in their lives. But yeah, submerged continuities.
Love that.
Thank you, Tony Rains. Fucking genius, man.
You know what moment I'm thinking about now is when Min Min has that monologue before leaving to the Buddhist temple
Mhm.
and talks about how she has so little in her life, and she's distraught, and NJ seems to be failing to console her, shall we say. During that conversation, the camera is on Min Min, but you see the window over her shoulder, the window out of the apartment. You can hear faintly Lily's mom arguing with a lover in the apartment over. Then the camera, I believe, cuts outside the window, pointing into Min Min and NJ.
Mm-hmm.
And then the sound also cuts so that you hear now the traffic outside, and you hear a little bit more clearly Lily and her mom arguing from behind the window. So you're in the space suspended in air between these two apartments, hearing a little bit of both, but mostly hearing the city.
Mhm.
I don't even know why I'm thinking about that or what it means or does, but it's very stirring. Like you feel the parallel and disconnect between these two families. You see them in the context of the city. You hear them in the context of the
Yeah.
city. Traffic just goes by impassively. There's so much to it. It's very poetic.
The pulling back shows you the confidence that he has to not show you the whole conversation. The whole conversation is not important.
Mhm.
You know, he suggests so much, and that's why the film feels like it goes by so fast. This could have been 6 hours long. You know what I mean? And that's why it feels so
about 6
epic,
hours.
because so much is going on, but a lot
I
of
would
it
do
is
it.
through suggestion and from pulling back. Sorry, what were you saying? Would
No,
you
I
say
said I
Wilson?
would
We're just
watch
saying
a
we would
6-hour
watch
version
6
of
hours
Oh,
of this
Yeah,
movie.
I would do
I don't
it.
know if it'll be better.
I'll still watch it. I don't care.
I would. Young come back from the dead. Make part 2. Anyway,
Oh.
I was thinking about how that scene where Min Min is about to quit her job to go for her retreat, that reflection shot from outside the building.
Oh,
Oh.
that's the best one.
One of the best shots. And the city is going, and then
That's the
she
best one.
talks to her friend. There's only one line, and then just you don't hear the rest of the conversation. Or maybe they stop talking. It doesn't matter. And you know exactly what is happening. Shit's going down in this woman's head. She's making a choice.
Yeah.
You know, so stuff like that. Like there's a lot of stuff that you don't see the thing. You don't see that thing. You know, he just moves. The
No.
ellipses really just happens, but you're able to grasp everything that's being suggested between the scenes.
With that shot of Min Min in the office, Yang didn't realize until they were going through the dailies afterwards that there was like a red light that was like blinking
Ooh.
right where Min Min's heart is.
Oh, what?
And he's like, you could almost like hear her heartbeat through watching that.
Unreal.
And this is
Oh.
like this, and also the shot with Ting Ting and Fatty at the crossing sort of wants me to bring up one of my like big like young isms. And it is, I've been saying this for ages and people are just like, no, but I'm like, yes, it's a thing. It is the way that Yang activates the frame without moving the frame. And there's so many,
Ooh.
there's a lot of elements that you can play with in
Yeah.
filmmaking, right? There are like, there's cutting, there's panning, there's tilting, whatever. But I argue that like one of the most interesting ways to change the frame is to do something within the frame itself. And Yang does this with all of his films, whether it's like a blinking light or like a street thing going up, like something moves within frames that sort of lets you reorient yourself without having to move the camera or without having to cut at all. He says something about like in that shot with the office, with Min Min in the office, some office workers turn on the lights in the background, right?
Yes.
In the middle of the shot. And he says that is a way of showing another perspective of reality taking shape in front of your eyes.
Oh my god.
Yeah. And I think Yang is like, I think he's thinking about film that in a much different way or a much different approach than a lot of like Hollywood-centric directors treat their films. I think he really prioritizes his actors. He really prioritizes his actors' performances. Like in this commentary, he really stressed his love for these actors, and also he talked a lot about why he wanted to do a lot of long takes. And one of the main reasons for doing that is that he wants to, he's an anti-cut director. He's an anti-cut director.
Yeah.
He says, the Hollywood approach requires viewers to be more jumpy and more hysterical. When I do a full, like a good performance in my film, it's fully recorded. I feel like a lot of Hollywood actors deserve shots like this because they don't get cut. This man!
Mic drop.
Who's fighting you on the activating the frame thing? It's clearly in the shot.
I don't know. I feel like I keep on saying it and people don't get it. I'm
Okay,
like,
now you
oh
have
my
it
god,
on
yeah,
record.
it activates the film frame so well. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, see when he turned that light on? They're like, yeah. I'm like, no!
There's that, but there's also, think about the scene with Lily and Ting Ting in that restaurant, and then there's this crowd of young people behind them moving and
Oh,
talking.
yeah.
That's
Oh,
activating the
yeah.
frame as well as the audio with all the shit going on outside in the world. You know, you have noise, but you also have talking. The office also, shit's always happening in the office, whether it's Min Min's office or NJ's office. There's always something going on, you know, like life is happening outside the frame. I think about how the magic trick
Yes.
scene ends, where it ends with the waiter coming in and it's like, you guys gambling? And like just something like that. The world comes in. Life just doesn't happen to you in the movie. This is like movie within life rather than trying to approximate it within the movie. So stuff like that is like fantastic, where they feel like people within the city.
Yes.
I feel like I have other examples, but there's so many. Oh, I was thinking about the cut. One of my favorite cuts in this, and it seems like really stupid and really simple, is the cello. When
Oh,
you guys got it.
Yep.
I know exactly.
So this
I know
is
what you're
when
talking about.
Ting Ting comes back, and
He talks at length about this.
Ting Ting comes back, and Lily's at the doorway having a freak out. She screams, runs back into the house because her mom is fucking her teacher. And she's not happy about that.
Whoops.
And as she runs in, her cello falls, hits the wall, and then it falls against the wall. He cuts into the house, looking at the door, and then that cello slowly drops on the ground. And then that motivates Ting Ting to enter the house to pick up the cello and see what's going on. Yeah. I don't know why. I think that's just really smart. But tell me what he said, Wilson.
He says it is smart. He says they did the shot prior. They did the shot prior and the cello nearly fell.
Ooh.
So then he was like, why don't we make it fall? And why don't we put a cut? Like, why don't we? That's what
Motivates the cut.
initiates the cut.
Yeah.
Is yes. And he talks
my
about
God.
how his cuts are very intentional.
Yeah.
And he doesn't like to cut unless he has to. Yeah.
Because you can tell that the cello falling is a way to mask the cut, rather than the cut is the way to mask what else you're doing. Because people cut to mask their inability to make something happen. He doesn't like the cut, so he masks the cut with action. Right?
Yes. Anti-cut cinema.
Dude's thinking
We're
in 4D.
here. He is. He is thinking in 4D because another dimension of this is that shooting less coverage makes it faster and cheaper to shoot the movies. He is playing
That's
4D
true.
chess.
Wow.
He says, yeah, cuts need to be invisible, and film schools don't teach you that. They teach you to make loud cuts.
That's interesting. I mean, we do hear about, okay, you're supposed to motivate cuts with like action or whatever so that they're easier to get into, or to like, stay on one side of the line, or to cut and make sure the frame changes X amount such that I don't feel the jarring jump cut, right? So there are these rules to make cuts easier to accept. But the premise of those rules is that cuts are hard to accept, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
why fight it? Why cut?
I just had a conversation with our friend from Wesley and Maya yesterday about also narratively motivated cuts and how cuts automatically remind you of the authorial hand of the movie. So it has to be very on purpose when a cut happens. Thinking about that cut of the cello falling, yes, it is moving with the moments that happened in production of the cello coming to a balance. Yes, it is masking that movement across the cut. But crucially, when Ting Ting arrives on her floor of the apartment building and sees Lily, Lily is just standing there staring at Ting Ting. And my first thought is, oh, she's mad at Ting Ting. And then when Lily screams and runs back into the apartment and knocks the cello aside on her way in, there's a moment of confusion. And then when it cuts to inside the apartment looking out and the cello falls and Ting Ting approaches within that frame, again, to Wilson's point of changing the frame from a static shot, it makes me realize, oh, something is happening here that is beyond my understanding. And then we get the reveal that Lily is apoplectic at her mother sleeping with her teacher. And it's a moment when those several tools of the cut, withholding the cut, changing the mise-en-scène without changing the frame, sound, performance, are all combining to remind us of the limits of our perspective. And it all changes. Yang is so good at those changes and reminding us the ways in which we can and cannot understand each other.
Okay, let's go from one yang to two yangs. Talk about yang yang.
Ooh. Oh my god, I feel like I can talk about this movie for like 4 hours, but it's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, I know exactly what you mean. I'm happy to sit and talk to you about this movie for 4 hours if it comes to it.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about Yang Yang.
Honestly, truly one of the best child performances that I've ever seen. Jonathan Chang, also named Yang Yang, was also too young for the role. He was 7 years old, and Edward Yang was casting for a 10-year-old, but he let it slide because he said this kid is one of the smartest kids he's ever met, and he was able to pick up on so many different things, not just character related, but just working on set as well. He said by a few weeks in, he was already telling the camera where to go and how to frame shots. So I wonder how he's doing now. But what a tuned in performance. I don't doubt that this kid knew what he was trying to deliver emotionally. I think he was so with it that he knew exactly what to give to this movie, and it's just so perfect for the role. You can't see the movie without him.
In the same way that you see NJ and Ting Ting reflectively processing, I love that the sequences of Yang Yang are so often structured around, in a kind of like Mike Ehrmantraut way, like watching this character take an action and retroactively putting together his thought process. Like you see him running around the hallway outside his apartment, snapping photos with the flash on, and you're just watching him do that, and you're thinking, this scamp is adorable. Like, what's he doing? And then you get to see him explain to his neighbor why he's doing the thing. Or you see him practicing holding his breath in the sink, and then you see him going and trying to swim.
Mm.
Or you see him filling up a balloon with water and looking over the balcony. And then you see who he's trying to hit. Like the way that you're a little bit behind him lends the movie so much play and active engagement in thinking about figuring out this child's thought process.
Like, what he doing?
And it's so endearing.
Yeah. And then also the most important, the most biggest example of that is his final speech that he begins to write in his little notebook, and he delivers, and I think he takes everyone by surprise. Like he takes his family by surprise. That this really thoughtful young man. Oh my God.
He says, I want to show people what they can't see, which is, of course, one of just the best metaphors for filmmaking, that he takes photos of the backs of people's heads and then gives them to them. It's the perfect statement on filmmaking, really.
Yang Yang is like a vehicle for theme, but never does it feel like overbearing the way that theme is delivered to. You know, you only understand the photos of the backs of the heads, and then he gives it to Artie, and that's it. We're done. We're done with this thread. You know, you get it immediately, and it's connected with what he tells his father in the car early on when he's like, we can't see what's behind our heads. And so within 2 scenes, you got it. The theme is delivered. And then that variations of that theme in everything that he's doing, where he's just experimenting and trying stuff out and learning about his sexuality. Also one of the best scenes as well, when the audiovisual room, where he sees the woman, the girl that's been bullying him, and then he like has a bit of a sexual awakening, and then there's like the storm happening behind her. Holy moly. I was like, damn. Yeah. Great scene also, like the way he sets it up.
Activating the frame! Frame!
No, but this thing I noticed this time is that, because the thing that alerts him to like, oh, women, you know what I mean? Is like she walks into the room and then her skirt catches onto the door and then he sees her panties.
Yes.
But the way that he sets it up is when he enters the door, his shirt gets caught onto the door frame. Yeah, and then you're like, oh, this is set up. Like even within this 1 minute, he sets up this thing so it doesn't feel like a random thing that happens. You know, it feels part of something that would happen. And yeah, great scene. And then it cuts to the storm outside as well. Back to Ting Ting. Oh my God, so many great cuts in this. And Young is just like learning so much stuff. And like the water thing, I always get confused. Like, what's he doing jumping in the water in his full clothing? And then he comes back so gleeful,
drenched,
soaking wet.
I remember the first time watching that movie. You know, it must have been in class.
Yeah, I remember.
Or maybe it was in the film series, but
I think it was the film series. It played the film series before we watched it in East Asian
It's the film
cinema.
series on that big ass screen.
I think you're right. It was
grateful.
But the feeling in the room when you're not sure if Yang Yang has just drowned and you're waiting like 2 full scenes to find out is excruciating. It's a little cruel.
And then he comes back with the biggest shit-eating grin that you've ever seen.
This freaking dude is
like, I fooled you.
I'm trying to think of other things with Yang Yang.
When he says at the end that he wants to show people things that they don't understand, I did maybe a little bit self-aggrandizingly have the thought, that's filmmaking or teaching.
It's true. It is.
Films are also teaching tools.
And I think Yang obviously puts himself in Yang Yang. And I think he also puts himself in a lot of the characters in this movie. I think you can tell because of how gently he treats these characters.
Even Adi.
Yeah, even Adi. But I think that's really what makes the film work for all of the characters, is that you really get a good sense of who they are, like their humanity, or the way that they are just going through life. And you could put that in any of his films, like especially with A Brighter Summer Day. Like I think that sort of like
Yeah.
character intention or like understanding a character is crucial for that film. But it is like a core part of EE and is a big part of why it works.
Agreed. Well said.
It's like literally one of the best movies ever made. Like yes, no one, like it's hard. You can't really put anything above this. It's so good.
It's too good. I just thought, I was like, man, EE is like the film that got everyone to want to be a filmmaker, and also the reason why you shouldn't be a filmmaker.
Yeah.
Because like, how the fuck are you gonna do this again? Like, people have been trying.
Yeah.
People have been trying to do
people
EE
have
again.
been trying.
You
They
see it.
have been trying.
It's not happening, guys. Like, the dude already did
It's
it.
not good.
He already
It's
did
not
it.
good.
And if
It's
you're
not
not
good.
copying him
It's not good.
and you're trying to do something new, it's like, I don't know how. You know, like it feels impossible.
But you don't need to, though.
you don't need to.
Yeah.
Which is why I mean by we could have ended cinema with EE.
Yeah.
We could have just said we're done.
2000s. It could have been it.
We're done. Yeah. Nah, I'm kidding.
I think Young would disagree.
Let's go through this competition. This movie premiered at Cannes in 2000. Okay, let's talk about some of the other films in this competition. Okay, we have Ken Loach's Bread and Roses. We have Michael Haneke's Code Unknown. We have Lars von Trier's Dancer in the Dark, which won the Palme d'Or that year. We have Jian Wen's Devils on the Doorsteps, Shinji Aoyama's Eureka, Nagase Oshima's Gohato, Wong Kar-wai's In the Mood for Love,
Oh,
Roy
boy.
Anderson's Songs from the Second Floor,
Ooh.
and Edward Yang's EE. Oh, and Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Oh. Oh, deep cut.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
What, like, that was probably the best year for like, I don't think there's been a better year for cinema since
I've
then.
been saying that, man. The two of those films are all my Letterboxd for favorites. It's like ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Wow.
Ridiculous year for films.
Yeah. What a crazy, crazy year for movies. And arguably, EE is not his best film.
Wait, what would you say is?
I already know the answer here. It's the same answer as
Is it A Brighter Summer Day?
Yeah.
which we will be talking about
I'm very excited to discuss that one.
real soon.
Well, okay. Yeah, I think EE is very like a perfect film encapsulation, right? Like I think in this package. But I think A Brighter Summer's Day might be able to like achieve something even more moving or impactful. I don't know. It's hard to say.
It's certainly not as positive.
No, definitely not. But yeah, this man has an all hits, no misses filmography. I've seen all of his feature films.
I haven't seen all of them, so I can't say that yet.
I think the lowest I've gave a film of his is 4 stars. And I've given 4 of his films 5 stars.
My God.
Holy
That's
moly.
Edward Yang.
Dude has a lean and mean filmography.
Yeah.
Yeah, but wish he still gave us more. Always wish he still gave us more.
Yeah.
I think that's like
I was just thinking that.
personally one of like my massive regrets is like if Yang didn't die so early, we really
Yeah.
would have.
And he was
gotten,
cooking
like,
some stuff.
So many great movies. Yeah, he was gonna make a movie in Seattle based on his time there.
Oh,
Are
huh.
there things from EE this time that you guys, I don't know, like felt more connected to? Like for me, like 6 years after the last time I saw it, now I'm like, maybe that's the reason I get ticked off at NJ is that I'm not ticked off at NJ as a father figure. I'm ticked off at NJ as me. Like I'm not there yet with kids, but like I see myself in NJ and the kind of things that he's encountering now that I've moved into a business with a capital B. And like seeing him like dealing with corporations and stuff and like profit making and being like, oh, okay. Like I'm having these experiences as well. Or like meeting somebody from your romantic life from the past in the present. Like also something that's like, oh man, that's like an experience that I can feel, I don't know, commiserate with, I guess.
Yeah.
and like thinking about younger people growing up and like what is the effect you have on them about birth, about death. Like these things are been happening in the last 6 years, and I think I'm starting to see myself in NJ, and I can't imagine maybe 20 years from now when I feel like I am NJ and like how that's gonna be like watching this film. When I finally catch up to him. But I'm starting to see him as not say a future, but like a version of myself that could happen, right? Which is like, I don't know, kind of scary. Aging is a thing.
Sure is.
Sure is. Not so in line with that, Ben, but I don't know. It's been so recent. Like I've only seen the last time I saw this film was like 3 months ago. So it's like still really fresh. Like I feel like right now, like with this movie and with Chungking, like I feel like I know like it courses through my blood. Like I feel like I know the beats of this movie like so well that I just like can't like sort of divorce myself from it. It's not, you can't like take that away from me. So yeah, I don't think I can say something that like hit me on this watch, but I feel like I've fused with this movie at this point. that's how much I love this movie. It's only 2 movies that I fused with in my life. That's just the second one.
Eli?
For me, I think it is also NJ, but in a different way. Where, I mean, what you said earlier, Ben, about the movie kind of acting as a mirror for where you are and a source of feedback for where you are definitely holds true. I'm thinking about how, I've spoken on the podcast before about how I started off working in filmmaking and post-production, and that was sort of the dream. And now I'm a teacher and I like it more than I ever liked working in post-production. And I'm thinking about NJ's journey of letting go of what was once a dream and finding a calmer but more fulfilling happiness for it. And maybe he is still in this movie avoidant about some conflicts and not perfectly there. But in the end, given the chance to reflect on that path, he doesn't regret it and finds fulfillment. And I feel that way right now too. So I do feel connected to him in that sense.
That's really great, Eli.
I feel like it's time to add EE to the yearly rotation. I think it'll be nice.
Yeah, you should, Ben. You should fuse with the movie.
6 years was too long.
I can't believe you haven't seen this for 6
Watch it till I get
years,
sick of
man.
it.
That's crazy.
Yeah, me too. I can't believe it.
You should watch it till you get sick of it.
Yeah.
But okay,
Same for me.
honestly, with A Brighter Summer Day, it's been a while as well. So I think that's gonna be it's gonna be pretty big for me. We'll see how that goes. So we haven't announced it yet, but similarly to our Kiyoshi Kurosawa series, we are going to be tackling not just a popular pick and a deep cut pick. We're maybe doing the whole thing, but we're not promising you
The whole
just
thing?
yet.
Wait, I didn't know that.
Are we doing the whole thing? Let's find out.
All right, let's find out. Honestly, I would love to be able to see his full filmography and discuss it with you both, because the ones that I've seen, I really love.
I think it's very achievable.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's do it.
Most things are.
Yeah. A Brighter Summer Day is could be considered another popular pick. So then all the others would be
That's
deep
true.
cuts, because A Brighter Summer Day and EE are both like readily available on the Criterion channel. So I think bringing a light to his lesser known films will be good for our audiences as well. So everyone can join us in this journey of watching through Yang's whole filmography. Yeah.
Okay.
Greatest director
All
who
right,
ever
sign me
lived.
up.
No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, maybe.
Let's find out. My God, we're just going. Will be so few directors on the deep cut list, and if we keep going at this rate, but it's okay.
Hey, we don't do Edward Yang every day. We don't do Edward Yang every day.
Yeah.
This has definitely been a white whale for us as well. We've
Yeah.
discussed Young since the beginning.
We've been threatening.
We really have.
Yeah.
Hope you like it.
Don't threaten us with a good time. Okay. Don't threaten me with a film that's going to change my life perspective every time I watch it. Okay. Thank you for listening to this episode of Deep Cut. Please rate and review because that helps us keep making the show and helps others discover the show as well. We looked at our Apple podcast reviews and the last review was 3 years old. So if you're listening to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, you can stop right now and go to Apple Podcasts and leave a review there saying how much you love the show, because that will actually help others keep discovering the show. So you can also subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts so you'll know when our next episode drops. You can keep up with us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Letterboxd at Deep Cut Pod. You can also join us to talk about movies on our Discord server. We also have a Patreon, so if you want to support us, we deeply appreciate it. Click the link in our description or go to deepcutpod.com to find our Patreon, Discord, and all the other socials that we've mentioned here. Deep Cut is hosted and produced by us, Wilson Lai, Benjamin Yap, and Eli Sands. This episode was edited by Bouchard, and our cover art is designed by Justina Yam, and our theme song is composed by the one and only Eli Sands.
Aw, shucks.
I'm Wilson.
I'm Ben.
I'm Eli.
Take care, and we're looking forward to talking about more movies with you next time.